Welcome to the No DQ live recap of WWE NXT for May the 11th, 2021. Shout out to the chat room and everybody watching this, whether it's live or on demand. Thank you all for your viewership and support of NoDQ.com and the channel. Let's go ahead and get started with this recap. We had two big title matches hyped up for this show. We opened with a video package which was previewing these matches, and we went straight into our first match, which was Karrion Kross, the NXT World Champion, against Austin Theory. You had Kross do his usual spectacular entrance with Scarlett, and Johnny Gargano was out there with Theory. He was just completely mesmerized by this entrance, and then he turned over to Theory and he's like, "You got this." Basically, it was Kross beating the crap out of Theory. Austin drop-kicked Kross, and Kross no-sold it. Kross suplexed Theory around, and it took Gargano getting on the apron for a distraction, the referee coming over to Gargano, and then you had Theory raking the eyes of Kross to get the upper hand. But it did not last for very long. He tried to throw Kross into the barricade, DDT'd him on the floor, and Kross just kicked out at one. Kross popped back up and went to town with the Saito suplexes, and then Theory got knocked out with the strike to the back of the head. Kross put on his submission, but Theory was already out, so the referee immediately called for the bell. Kross picked up the victory, and then as Kross was celebrating, we had Finn Balor pop in the ring right behind Kross. And Balor said he wants his rematch for the NXT title. Kross said he wants it too. And the match was set up. 2 weeks from now, we will have the NXT Championship match. Good way to open up the show. I have to give Austin Theory a lot of credit for selling like a pro. Like, this was Shawn Michaels almost as far as the level of selling goes for Karrion Kross and making Kross look like a complete badass. So hats off to him. It was announced that a match originally scheduled for NXT, Alexander Wolf versus Killian Dane, was not going to happen. Alexander Wolf was suffering from what appeared to be a stomach flu or a stomach bug, and that was that. TJS with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Tyler. He says, "You would think that people would have had enough of silly love storylines." Paul McCartney reference there. He says, "I look around me and see it isn't so. Dexter Lumis and Indy Hartwell." Yeah, and I'm just going to say this now. I missed not seeing Dexter Lumis on this show. Spoiler alert, there was no Dexter this weekend. We had a very brief video package with Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, the new women's tag team champions, and they were in this superhero getup. But other than that, they were not on the show, and there was no Dexter Lumis, but I get it. You want to showcase some of the other talents, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, like, this Dexter stuff to me is the hottest storyline in NXT. So if there's one storyline you want to keep it going on a weekly basis, this would be the one. Backstage, we had Leon Ruff meeting up with William Regal. He wanted to compete, and he even said that he got cleared, but Regal was still not going to allow it to happen. We then had Breezango versus MSK in a non-title match. MSK, of course, the tag team champions. And it was basically a showcase match for MSK. The highlight was probably the referee who did a leapfrog in the middle of the match to avoid being hit by Tyler Breeze, who was coming off the ropes. And MSK did their usual innovative offense, and they picked up the victory. And after the match, there was a nice handshake between the two teams, and it was fine. It served its purpose to build up MSK. And let's be real here, Breezango, they're not going to be serious challengers anytime soon. If this was Monday Night Raw, though, Breezango probably would have won the match, and then they'd have a tag team title match next week, knowing how WWE operates on the main roster. We had Gargano backstage arguing with William Regal because there was going to be a match next week for the North American title. Bronson Reed getting his opportunity against Gargano, and Gargano was not pleased, but Regal said the match was happening. We then had Pete Dunne come to the ring for a promo, and he said he does not blame Karrion Kross for picking Finn Balor, basically saying Kross picked an easy opponent because Pete Dunne, as far as he's concerned, he is the baddest man in NXT, and he called out anybody in the back for a match. And all of a sudden we had Leon Ruff show up, attack Pete Dunne from behind, and we had a match. Even though Regal said he did not want Leon Ruff competing, we got the match. I guess because it was an open challenge, William Regal did not have the authority to stop this, so there you go. Dunne did his usual joint manipulation. Ruff made a comeback, but it was short-lived, and Dunne just kept striking Ruff in the back of the head, and the referee had no other choice but to call off the match, giving Pete Dunne the victory, and Dunne continued the attack on Ruff after the match for good measure. So nice little match here to further establish Pete Dunne as a potential contender for the NXT World title at some point. We then had maybe the most interesting segment of this show. We had Isaiah Swerve Scott come to the ring for a promo with his brand new entourage. And the name of this group, they are being referred to as Hit Row. Swerve Scott introduced his new teammates, and they all took turns cutting promos. They all had microphones. You had Top Dollar, who's been on the WWE Most Wanted Treasures show, and he started spinning some rhymes, as they say. And then we had Ashante Adonis talk a little bit, and we had B-Fab, who is the female member of the group, cut a promo, and then they finished off by saying, Hit Row, if you don't know, now you know. What did you guys think about this in the chat room? A lot of people seem to think it has potential. I think it definitely does. Like, I was not blown away by the promo, but I did feel like these guys could be on to something, and we'll see if they're given more mic time, and we'll see how things progress with it. But it's something new, and it's a chance for Scott to be taken to the next level. And I agree with Nick Glavin. Swerve needed something. TJS in the chat calls it a main roster gimmick. And we'll see. We'll see if they can take these guys to the next level and build some new stars out of this faction. And yeah, it's pretty cool when there is a new faction and there's not like 10 other factions in NXT. And Soledad My Angel says NXT does need a heel stable. We had a little skit. There was a segment out in some suburb area. A lakefront home was being put up for auction. The starting bidding price was $2 million. And of course, he had Cameron Grimes there bidding for this. He bid up to $8 million. And then, when you know it, Ted DiBiase bet the not $8 million, but rather $20 million. Why he betted so much more when he could have just bet 9. But I guess he had to bid so high that there's no way that Grimy could outbid him. And Ted talked to Grimy afterwards and said that Grimy He's got money, but he's no $1 million man. And of course, Grimy was freaking out and all over the top, just very upset that Ted DiBiase once again got the best of him. So yeah, entertaining stuff here from these guys. It's corny, it's over the top, but it's fun to watch. It's definitely entertaining. TGS says Grimes is so good. I agree. We had One Lorcan versus Kyle O'Reilly, or Cool Kyle as he's now being known as. And Pete Dunne was out there. Dunne distracted Kyle, and that led to Lorcan getting the upper hand for a while. But you did have Kyle make his comeback and picked up the win with the diving knee off the top. Pretty standard match, showcase match for Cool Kyle. And then Dunne immediately attacked Kyle after the match, only for Bobby Fish to make his save, who we have not seen Bobby Fish in several months in NXT. However, just as the fans thought we were going to see reunion, it didn't appear to be the case. Fish said he was only there to take care of some unfinished business and take care of the scores that needed to be settled. But yeah, Bobby Fish is back, and maybe we'll get Cool Kyle versus Pete Dunne at some point. That should be a hell of a match. We had an announcement that next week the Johnny Gargano versus Bronson Reed match will be held inside a steel cage. And that's next week. And 2 weeks is the show that they're really loading up. That will be the Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross match. Balor attempting to win back his championship. That will be on the NXT show in 2 weeks. We then had our main event. And by the way, before we get to the main event, they did announce the next takeover, which will once again be in your house. And even better still, Todd Pettengill, the Toddster, will be back. Of course, former WWE announcer from the mid-90s. He was at the In Your House NXT last year. He'll be back again this year. Looking forward to that. We had our main event, the 2 out of 3 falls match for the Cruiserweight Championship. Santos Escobar versus Kushida. Legado del Fantasma was out there at ringside. They tried to interfere right off the bat, but then MSK jumped them and a big fight broke out, and both teams were sent to the back, told to be going backstage, and that was that. It was down to one-on-one back in the ring, and Escobar pretty much dominated the match in the beginning, and then he did this modified Boston Crab on the outside using the ring post, and eventually he got Kushida back in the ring, finished off Kushida with the Phantom Driver to score the first fall, and then fairly quickly Kushida was able to pretty much out of nowhere get an arm submission on, and Escobar tapped out, making it one apiece. And then when we came back from the commercial, Kushida continued to work over Escobar and try to set him up for the hoverboard lock. But then Escobar got back into it. They exchanged several near falls back and forth. Crowd started the "This is awesome" chant. And then Kushida got the hoverboard lock on. However, Escobar was able to make it to the rope. And then Kushida, he hit a suplex, turning it into a pinfall combination, and scored the victory. Beat him 2-1 to remain the NXT Cruiserweight Champion. Nick Lavin says this was a good main event. I agree, good main event. Pretty decent show overall. I don't think it was as good as last week. This week felt like a little bit more of a standard NXT show. Best match, I would say, was the main event. Mercedes, I forgot to mention that match, I think. I completely skipped over Mercedes Martinez versus Raquel Gonzalez. Wow. All right, so let me get back to that real quick. I did not talk about that. This was like in the middle of the show, and nobody called me out on it either. So anyways, Mercedes Martinez put up a good fight in here. She got She got right into it, going after Raquel Gonzalez. They went to the outside of the ring, and after the commercial break, Gonzalez got control. Mercedes made a comeback, and she speared Raquel on the apron, hit a fisherman buster for a near fall, and connected with some knees to the face, but then Gonzalez was able to recover from that, hit a big boot, and picked up the win with the powerbomb. It was a fine match. Wasn't like a classic or anything, but it was solid. Again, I think the strongest match of the evening was the main event. And there were a lot of showcase matches. It was just overall a pretty standard NXT. Good show overall, but there's not really anything that I would say was must see. Even the Cruiserweight match was pretty good, but I wouldn't consider it like an all-time classic or anything. But it was solid. I think I'm going to give the show a B- just because it wasn't really the most noteworthy or newsworthy NXT episode. It felt like just pretty much a standard show, but it was entertaining for what it was. So if you're a fan of NXT, it's pretty much what you would expect from them. Mike B with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Mike B. I appreciate it. He says, who has more money, Monty Burns or Ted DiBiase? Also, who's the better Grimes, Frank or Cameron? Well, I think Monty Burns is a billionaire. He's the $1 billion man. Ted DiBiase is just the $1 million man. So as much money as Ted DiBiase has, I'm not sure if he can compare with Monty Burns. And I'm going to go with Cameron Grimes. Poor Frank Grimes. He just could not make a name for himself. He was always in the shadows and could not reach his full potential. And Cameron Grimes is well on his way to reaching his full potential. Although he's going to have to somehow manage to get Ted DiBiase off his back. That's the only thing. Seeing a mix of B's and B minuses, Israel Diaz and Martin give it a B. MVP Kev, the game is on 100. And CC Drink give the show a B minus. Curtis Butler says, I love seeing Ted. Maybe Ted will end up being the manager for Cameron Grimes at some point. Not sure if that'll ever happen or not. I'm just curious to see how they end this storyline. Like, what's the end game to it? I mean, it's very entertaining, but is it actually going to lead to something that will take Cameron Grimes to the moon, as he likes to say? TGS says he did not watch. He's just here for the recap. Well, thank you for that, Tyler. And thank you guys again for tuning in. Got more content coming up this week. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, turn on the notifications for updates, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for all the wrestling news and rumors. And I will see you guys next time.